What if our favorite heroes from classic literature got together to form a superhero team? Well, this isn't a what if episode. This is just exactly what happens in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, both the comic and the movie. We're going to talk about it all in today's episode. This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priest to the geeks. I'm Joshua Noel. I'm one of your co-hosts. I've read all of these comics in the last month and seen the movie a couple different times. This was one of my first movies that action filmed movies I was allowed to watch.
Oh,
I think. Yeah. It was one of my earliest memories is seeing this film. So really excited to talk about this with both Will, and later on we'll talk with Will and TJ.
And I'm glad that ordinary Will, not just ordinary Will, but extraordinary. It's like I'm more ordinary than you could ever think of. I'm extraordinary. I think that's what that means, right?
Yeah. Well, and today, instead of like doing our usual like geek cred, what we've been geeking out on, we'll give you even greater geek cred by explaining what's happening. So much like other superhero teams, we did a little bit of time traveling, and the latter half of this episode we did, and we said, you know what, we'll travel back in time to do the beginning. And then we referenced all the stuff, this cool guest we were going to have, a different co-host was going to be part of it. And then we went back in time to do the beginning, and that guest and co-host weren't there, and we messed up the timeline, but we're still here and we're still going to talk about it.
Alternate timelines.
Let's ask our audience who are kind. If you're feeling kind enough and you don't want to smash Will's heart, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button instead. It is it's a dichotomy. You got to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
Good or evil. Yeah. Smash Will's heart, smash that like button. One of the two.
I'm a Lutheran, and I'm a lot of both and theology, saint and sinner, geek and faith, faith and science. But when it comes to smashing the like button, there is either or. Either you smash that or you smash my heart. So it's up to you, folks. It's up to you.
And if you're not on YouTube and you're on your laptop, go over to podchaser.com, leave us a rating review there. That helps the algorithms find us. If you're not on a laptop, it's okay, because you can always go to Spotify, hit the little 3 dots on our episode, and it'll give you the chance to rate our show. And on Apple Podcasts, you also can scroll down and rate and review there. And all of those things do help to different degrees help other people find our show, which is always nice.
Rate us extraordinary.
Yes. Also, we always like to thank one of our supporters from either Apple Podcasts, Captivate, or Patreon. And you could be one of those by going to one of those sites and supporting our show with like $1 to $10 to however much dollars a month you want. Today, we're thanking Daniel Sigmund. You're an awesome guy for supporting the show. We love you.
Can I do another quick shout out? I did a youth camp this past week. And I was wearing my Systematic Geekology shirt, and one of the youth were like, "You have a podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, it's called Systematic Geekology." And I know she was listening. So Sadie, if you're out there and you smash like and subscribe, your friend Clicky Will Rose appreciates you listening and subscribing to our podcast. Thanks, Sadie. You rock. You rule.
Yes, indeed. And with that, we're going to jump into some discussion. First, we're going to be talking about the comic, and later we're going to throw it over to future Josh, Will, and TJ to talk about the movie, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah, timelines are weird because, when we throw it to future, that's also the past for us. Like our timeline's different than the main timeline now.
Don't mess up my brain today, Joshua. Too much going on.
Yeah, it's not time for Fantastic Four. It's time for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, great graphic novel.
Let's talk. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is just kind of a comic about these classic literary heroes. We have the wife of Dracula. We have Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. All kinds of like, even a classic horror thing. If you're a big fan of like the Universal horror films like I am, you'll notice Invisible Man. In the comics, it's the Invisible Man, like proper. It's the same guy. In the movie, they choose someone else who just kind of steals his potion or whatever because they didn't want to use someone who's that reprehensible on the team, I guess. I don't know. And if you've been following our show for any time, you might recognize the Invisible Man. Brandon Knight, shout out to you, who used to be his avatar when he was part of the team, was the Invisible Man. So same movie, same book, same character, different story.
We have the Hulk. I mean, Dr.
Oh man, yeah, it's great. It's great. So before we get into much else, I've kind of mentioned mine. Like early on, this is one of the first action films I remember seeing. Definitely my first Sean Connery film. Which turns out it's the last one he made, but we'll find that out in the future. I don't know. It was a lot of fun for me as a kid. As an adult, I'm like, oh, this is cheesy and campy, and there's a lot of problems with this movie. But it was my first introduction to this thing, and as someone who hasn't read a lot of books yet, I recognized like Hyde. I didn't recognize the other ones, and as I grew up, I would be reading books or like curious about things. Like, wait a minute, Nemo, that sounds familiar. Like I'm reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea because I've studied this at such a young age that I was like, oh wait, so this was my first introduction to a lot of really interesting characters. So it's a little bit opposite of how I think Alan Moore intended it in the comic, where I think he expects most people to know the characters going in.
Yeah.
What was your history with this?
Well, we will talk in the future about where this falls in the phases of comic book movies from like 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s MCU, like where it fits in there, what they're trying to do then. But with this comic, in the early 2000s, I got back into reading comics, and I kind of jumped with both feet in, ready to go. And then people started telling me I kind of missed the late 80s, 90s comic book, graphic novels, deconstruction, reconstruction stuff. And so somebody's like, if you don't know Alan Moore, you got to read these books. You got to read The Watchmen. You got to read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. You got to read V for Vendetta. You got to read Alan Moore. He's the wizard of comic book authors and creators, and literally I think he is like a magician or a wizard or dabbles in paganism. I don't know. I think that's kind of his vibe. But they were like, you got to read some of his classic graphic novels. And so the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was definitely one that I picked up the graphic novel and read all the way through. Kevin O'Neill as the artist is a fantastic artist, and so I started learning more about Alan Moore's lure and his legendary status within the comic book creators out there. So his work with DC, little work out there, but then his own kind of creator owned stuff or stuff he did over in Europe. So this is one of those who I was like, it's in the top 10 or top 20. People say you got to read graphic novels. Alan Moore, here classic Alan Moore storytelling and edginess and weirdness and sexual deviancy and all those things. So, yep,
yeah, Invisible Man is bad.
Yeah. So that's where I started reading in the early 2000s.
Just given my name, Josh with the Wrong Opinions, I'm obligated to share wrong opinions every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the Alan Moore stuff I read, I think this is the only one that I really like clicked for me. Like Watchmen was like it was too wordy for me. Like I liked the show and the HBO series. I thought they were cool. The movie was good. I was like, nah. But this for me, like it was just the right amount of like quirkiness and like art to word ratio, I guess. And I was like, oh yeah, this. I ate this up. I loved this.
Good,
man.
Yeah, I'm with going back to Watchmen. Like I'll say that people are like, oh, Watchmen, greatest graphic novel of all time. And as I read it the first time, I was like, what is it? Why? And I think for the time, it was like a game changer in how you tell superhero comics and what it deconstructed. Mm-hmm. But then at second reading, seeing its place in history, I definitely understand the weight and where that fits in the history of comics. This too felt like a normal / graphic novel, like a rated PG-13R / adult graphic novel to sink your teeth in. But the storytelling was a lot more, I guess you're right. It kind of clicked with me and I really liked it.
Man, I can't believe you share that a bit.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to love Watchmen. And I'm a bad geek for not loving it enough.
It took me a while. Because it didn't happen in real time. It took me a while to figure out why it was so important.
Well, man. Yeah, we could talk a while about the Watchmen. That might be another episode, but for now, which I know we have a few friends, some of the original hosts of the show, Brandon Knight, Joe Day, are big Watchmen fans. Maybe one day. But for now, I kind of want to, since we're talking about the comic, for me, one of the big things wasn't just like, hey, this was a really great story. The story was pretty good. But really, for me, it was the characters that sold it. So, Will, could you kind of share about the gentlemen? Who are the characters that we are reading about in this book? Like the main Avenger team.
Yeah. And, in terms of team books, Justice League, Avengers, what Alan Moore does is pulls from like classic literature, a team of extraordinary gentlemen, but there's a female in there as well. And it starts off, help me remember the names. So we have, Wilhelmina. Yeah, Wilhelmina Murray, the bride of Dracula. You have Alan Quarterman, the big game hunter, adventurer. You have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, one person but split personalities. Captain Nemo, and then there's a few. The Invisible Man. That's Holly Griffin, right? I think. I don't know all their names. I haven't read all these classics. I know of them, but yeah, I mean, you have like, think of like Justice League. You have the big three, and you have people supporting cast around. Avengers the same way. I think the way you put together this team at the turn is very steampunk. It's the turn of the century. Is like the end of the 1800s, heading into the 1900s, and they're trying to figure out like the old school versus new school. There's new tech coming around the corner. There's the movie will go into that some a little bit more, but I think in a changing world, changing a millennia, you got from 1800s to the 1900s, big changes going on, big changes in tech. And so these kind of classic 1800s literature adventures that people are into are brought in to be like kind of a super team to solve a worldwide threat. Now, in the graphic novel, it's more of kind of an Asian Chinese threat, and in the movie we'll hear later on more of a kind of European German threat. I think, if I'm correct. So yeah, you have this team coming together. Again, how do you assemble a team? Why do they fit? Why do they not fit? What's the tension between the two? Some characters connect with others, some don't, and they got to figure out how to use their extraordinary adventures and experiences and powers and gifts to solve a worldwide threat. Does that help?
Yeah. And so in the comic, like that first one, we end up getting revealed the main baddie is James Moriarty, who it turns out did not die with Sherlock at the waterfall, which was a cool like twist on old literature. Kind of upset that Sherlock's not around, but whatever. And then volume 2 for me, and this is like, I don't want to get on a huge tangent, but the volume 2 was really cool of the graphic novel, which later they took the comics, they assembled them as graphic novels, and I think that reads better that way because they have these like writer's notes, I guess, as you go along. And it has like the a whole sci-fi. It's like, hey, we're gonna do aliens now. And I was kind of curious, do you wish they would have done the second movie and we could have had that same team and Tom Sawyer shooting at aliens with maybe Will Smith at Independence Day?
Yeah, it depends on who's doing it and what era they're doing it. Who knows? How they're
Maybe not.
Yeah, I think you're right. Alan Moore does read better, I think, in graphic novel form. That's why his graphic novels, you can't keep them on the shelf. That's why he's the one of the greatest comic book writers of all time, because the single issues are good, but they're so dense. But to read it in one full swoop of a story arc, I think it works better for Alan Moore. At least it does for me. And so, the second volume, they try to put so much in that movie, and they deviated so much. I mean, let's just, Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill, the artists, were not very happy that they took their characters and made a movie that and did them wrong. Alan Moore does not like it when you take his graphic novels and make it into motion pictures, because he feels like it loses its purity of what he's trying, his artistic ability in writing a comic or graphic novel. So they weren't happy with that, but in
a weird way. See, I love the comics. I really enjoyed the movie, especially growing up. It has a lot of nostalgia feels for me. But I think like the thing is like it feels almost like comparing apples and oranges kind of thing, where it's like these are not like, yes, it's technically the same characters, inspired one off the other, but they are just not like, one is meant to be thoughtful and like exploring these characters' depths, and the other one is, look, explosions. You know this guy, right? He shoots things.
Special effects. Yeah.
So they're fun for different reasons, but I mean, I think they're both fun. Okay.
Wait, so Josh, I have a quick question for you. I'm going to do a reverse card for you. What would you suggest out there? People listening who are not familiar with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, would you tell them to watch the movie or read the graphic novel first?
Movie first.
Movie first, then the graphic novel.
Because the graphic novel is so thought provoking. I feel like if you read it first, you're going to watch the movie and go, what in the world? And if you watch the movie and you put it in context, you're like, this is just like a 90s action film with all the cheesy campiness that you could possibly expect. You're going to be like, oh, that was great. And then you'll read the comic and be like, oh, wow, this is what it's meant to be. This is interesting. Yeah. I just feel for me.
Hey, we agree. We agree on that one too, Joshua. How about that?
There we go. Well, let's see if we can agree here. If you were to rate the comic specifically, the graphic novels, let's say 0 to 10, where would you rate these?
On art alone, it's got to be an 8. And then, of course, his storytelling and the mystery and the intrigue and the creepiness of it and all that stuff is definitely for adults. It's not for kids. It's not funny books for your kiddos in elementary school. So let's just get that clear. But I would just the art and the groundbreakingness of it and what they did with these characters. I'm giving it an 8. I really like this graphic novel. There's a reason it's a graphic novel and on my geek shelf, that I've kept over the years.
See, this might be recency bias because I just recently read all of it in like the last month. And remind you, like going up with the movie just as like a thing that I grew up with, full of action, full of fun. I went into this expecting like Silver Age comics, bright colors, lots of pow bangs on the, on all the panels. So I went in with a certain set of expectations, and I left going, I was really overwhelmed with how good it was. So I'm inclined to give it a 9.5, like just because the only reason I don't give it a 10 is like, I'm thinking about, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't put it on the same thing as like a G. Willow Wilson comic or Mike Mignolia's Hellboy or even Ed Brubaker's Captain America. But man, it comes pretty darn close for me. Like, I'm like, that was good. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah. For those out there who know Joshua as the one with wrong opinions, he's right on this one. He's right on this one. I agree with him.
Oh man, good stuff. Well, Will, I think we're at a good point here. We need to go ahead and throw this show over. I'm Joshua Noel. I was here with Will Rose of the past, and I'm going to throw this episode over to our other reporter, Joshua Noel, who's with Will Rose to talk about the movie.
Hi, my name is TJ. I'm here to tell you about the Systematic Geekology shop. That's where we post all of our merch. It is hosted on Creator Spring, and we have a ton of really cool merch, mostly clothing. We have hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, and more. Our hosts wear them all the time. It's actually super comfy. We have glassware, mugs, which everybody loves a good mug. Fill out your cupboard, get rid of some old ones, which is the part that I never do. That's why I have too many cups. We have cloth bags, posters, and it's really stuff. We like to put our icons on there. We like to put quotes, things we come up with. And it's cool. It's a cool way, and a lot of it is pretty subtle too, to show support for one of your favorite shows. And my personal favorite is actually our SG dad cap, which I haven't been reluctant to buy it because now I have to wear hats at work, and then I get tired of wearing hats. But it's really cool. It's really understated. It is our logo right here, and then it says Systematic Geekology on the back. It's great. It's a really good hat. We have a few of them floating around. Check it out. And if we could all just rock the SG dad cap in public, I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Thank you, Josh. Like you said, I'm here with Will Rose, who has, from my understanding, seen the movie for the first time, but has read the comics first. So a little bit of a different perspective. Will, what can you tell us about your first takes? What stood out to you as different seeing the movie after having already read the comics?
Yeah, I mean, let's think about the creative team on the comics. We have Alan Moore, we have Kevin O'Neill, legends in the comic book industry, and we know Alan Moore from Watchmen, V for Vendetta. We have League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. They are pissed off that they're making their properties in the movies, and they canceled them or disowned them, and even tried to sue for plagiarism. All this kind of stuff. Alan Moore does not like his comic book storytelling made into movies. He really doesn't. He's a wizard. He may cast a spell on you. He has weird kinks that show up in his comic books. So yes, the movie was a little tamer, a little bit more early 2000s than Alan Moore 80s and 90s comic book writing. So let's just say that right there. And then let's set the movie in its context. If we think of like waves and phases of comic book movies. In the 70s, we have the Superman movie, right? In the late 80s, 90s, we have the Batman movies. Early 2000s, we have the X-Men movie, we have Spider-Man movies. There's this resurgence of like, let's make these awesome comics into movies. And then 2003, a year before Hellboy, by the way, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen hits the big screen. And you could say it's quite different from the comic book. They try to make an action movie with long drawn out explosions and guns. The characters are there, but the plot is totally different from the graphic novel. The main players and their role and who's the main character in the movie, totally different from the graphic novel. And so before you have Avengers Assemble, they try to do some Avengers movie kind of like with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Hellboy did kind of it better when you get a bunch of freaks and extraordinary people together to do some thwarting of weird people in masks. So anyway, like they tried to get a cast together to assemble a team. As I go back and watch this movie, it's not as bad now as I watch it, knowing where its place is and the phases and what they're trying to do. Like I had fun with it, and I understand there's different parts of this movie. I got explosion and special effects fatigue, and I was like, why are we on this boat for like 30 minutes? And that's my take. It is different from the graphic novel. Read the graphic novel first, and then if you watch this movie, just have fun with it and see its place in the context of the phases of comic book movies and people trying to create moving pictures out of graphic novels. Does that help? Just like Alan Moore in The Watchmen, like he did not want that ever to happen. They tried, and then they made like a TV series. They've tried over and over again, but there's something about Alan Moore that like it's hard to translate to the big screen because it's edgy and weird.
Alan Moore, I feel like I don't know if you ever watch his movies. It just seems like everything he creates is strictly for the page.
Yep. He's a master with the comic book panels and word bubbles. Yep.
So I'm going to push back on two things Will said.
Okay.
One, I don't think the plot is completely different. I think a lot of the same parts of the plot are there, and that they had the same antagonist, and he was still doing his antagonizing for the same reason. But for the most part, it's a totally different film because
everything else
point. The point is not about the villain, unfortunately.
I mean, it's kind of like the overall, like, it's the old school legends versus like new school tech. And so they lean into that a little bit, right? Oh, the automobile, the machine gun, the whatever the technology of the day that's at the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s, the old school legends trying to figure out this new school technology. But like Europe and somewhat Red Skull or a villain from like Hellboy or whatever, and Europe being on the brink of war versus like the East, Asia, Saudi Arabia, whatever. Like, and I understand why in the early 2000s, post 9/11, why they're not leaning into like the Far East and Middle East as the villains of the day, but they're the whole structure and changing. There's some loose plot threads that are the same, but like in terms of the characters and who are the antagonists and how you
about to get there. But it was different. I don't think it's completely different. I am glad personally. This is the other thing I was going to put back. I'm really glad I saw the movie first. I would recommend people doing that because the comic's too much better than the movie. So I think if you read the comic first, it's going to be hard to enjoy the movie.
That's why it doesn't have a very good score.
I'm also really glad I saw this before I saw Hellboy.
Yeah.
Nothing I could do about that for you listeners. I mean, if you haven't seen Hellboy, I guess, but I feel like everybody's seen it at this point.
Mm-hmm. The original Hellboy, 2004.
Right? I liked Hellboy 2 as well. I like the Golden Army.
The Golden Army?
The reboot a few years ago? Reboot.
Not the reboot.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, the reboot had cool monsters. The monsters were actually kind of terrifying.
I do also like the reboot.
I don't think it was as good.
The reboot in theaters together.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, fun time. Yeah, we'll do that if they make a reboot of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen too, but they're not going to do that.
They should. I like that. I just love the concept of the legendary literature, classic literature heroes from the turn of the century in a modern world context of trying to figure that out. But I think it is important to think of like the history of comic books, graphic novels in the moving pictures and what that looks like and where it is and what they're trying to do and capitalize on kind of the trend of the day and where it sits. So they try.
I think I'll move on after this, I promise. But I think a lot of like the reason the Hellboy reboot wasn't as well received is because it wasn't made by Guillermo del Toro.
True. Well, also
that's just following up. That's just a losing game. Is trying to follow up on Guillermo del Toro.
Well, this is not a Hellboy episode. I want to do a Hellboy episode. We'll do one soon. But
we will. Yes.
I think partially it's because I'm gonna get a bunch of hate for this. I feel like the reboot was closer to a lot of the comics, and the comics don't work on movie. I think the other director, whose name I have a hard time pronouncing, TJ
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah. I think he knew that. He knew that going in. He was like, I'm gonna get the characters right, but I'm not gonna even try to make the vibe of that comic fit on the screen because it won't. You know.
Send your mail to Joshua Noel at yahoo.org.
Anyway, so with that, we're going to move forward. We already kind of mentioned this, but one of the big things that they changed in the 2003 film are the characters. And you know, TJ already has broken down who the characters are in the comics, and we have that core characters, but they added a few. So TJ, I'm going to throw it back to you again. Could you kind of tell us about the characters that they added and what part they played in this film?
Okay, give me a minute because everything.
All right, and in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and confirm. If you're on the podcast, you don't see the image on screen.
It's great.
We have an image that explains why being American is a superpower, and that's something that we collectively, as systematic geekology, you know, there's not a lot of things we agree on. We don't even agree on like a lot of what people think of as like basic theological statements, but we do all agree that being American is a superpower.
And we also agree that Christian nationalism is a heresy. So let's just go back to that one too.
It's a heresy, but it's also being American is a superpower. It doesn't make you Christian. Superheroes can be unchristian.
Yeah, that's a part of the movie that, like, in terms of eye rolling after reading the comic and like knowing Alan Moore and like his British wizardry, and then they got to bring in the American.
Well,
this graphic. Let me make a pitch for this graphic. Like, if you're listening just on with your earbuds on the podcast or in your car or whatever, you need to hop over at the 9-minute mark and on YouTube and see this graphic because it's very well done. Did you find this or do this on your own, Joshua?
I found it. I don't know where I found it.
Fantastic.
Plagiarizing. Yeah. 9-minute mark on part 2. So there'll be 2 parts on YouTube. And I like this. We're going to get into it a little bit more, but as a teaser for our bonus question, I understand why they wanted to include an American character in this. I think there's better American literature characters they could have pulled. And that's going to be something I choose for a later thing. It's like what other American would have made more sense on the team? But that's for later. TJ.
Yeah. Okay, so
pretty sure the only ones they added for the movie were AJ Raffles, right? I don't remember him in the book.
Who's AJ Raffles?
Or is he in the second book? No, I didn't rewatch the movie for this. So I'm going off of like an old memory of the movie.
I think it's just Dorian Gray and Tom Sawyer are the ones that they added.
Right. But Dorian Gray, they do like in some images in the graphic novel, they show him up on the wall like as a picture, and his legendary, like they allude to him. Him being a main character in the movie is not a main character in the graphic novel, but they allude to him and his legendary status in the graphic novel. But definitely Tom Sawyer is not. In the graphic
TJ, novel. Could you explain who these 2 characters are, where they come from, and what part they play in the film?
Nope, that's very very dense question.
Do you? I mean, you know who Tom Sawyer is? I haven't
seen the movie in a long time.
You've read Tom Sawyer though.
Yeah, I love it. In like middle school, I read Tom Sawyer. By this point, like I know of Tom Sawyer.
Will, can you explain who Dorian Gray and Tom Sawyer is?
Maybe it's been a long time in the movie. I know about Tom Sawyer. I know he's like a legendary
should I just explain who Tom Sawyer is?
Yeah, you should. But the fact that he shows up as like a secret agent, Jason Bourne,
it's so
like
dumb,
Captain America.
It is so cool.
It is absolutely hilarious.
I love it, but it's
so
dumb.
Cool. No,
Dorian Gray, like Dorian Gray is like immortal. He, you have all these like extraordinary gentlemen and a woman, but then you have who's the main character in the graphic novel, but not this movie. But anyway, and so the whole picture be immortalized in a picture and an image, but then out and about. Yeah, go ahead about
I would have never thought the woman was the main character of the comic, just for the record. I would have never picked up on that.
Introduces the whole thing, and she's
she was there, but she was just so uninteresting that I was like, eh.
Yeah, but she's like the only one that's always there.
Like, it makes sense now that you say it. I just would have never noticed because she wasn't interesting.
She does like everything.
Yeah. For me, she felt more like a plot device in the comics. Like, she didn't really have a lot of like.
Yeah, she drives the plot.
So everyone's a plot device. That's how the.
Yeah, but the rest of them have character. She was just there.
Well, she's depressed, dude. She's like an undead.
Anyway, TJ, what were you going to say?
Tom Sawyer is the namesake of the best Rush song.
Yeah,
Why
there
did
you
we
go.
let you say
TJ.
that? Okay, so
Ah,
Tom
that sounds good.
Sawyer is the star
On
of
this
The
podcast,
Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. And he is a child who is up to a bunch of shenanigans in still racist countryside of America. He tricks some people into painting a fence for him because he's like, oh, this is so much fun. Why don't you give it a try? And he just is up to a bunch of hijinks. It almost feels like the funny comics, but it's a novel. Like I could see the stories of Tom Sawyer just ending up being funny comics in a newspaper, and that's kind of how it's written. So it's really interesting that they took that character and said, you know what? Secret agent that likes to shoot things. That's who he is now. The rest of the characters are at least close to their literature counterpart. Not him.
I know you're going to do it later, but like just some ideas for other American folklore legends that could have been here instead.
Yeah. Please don't ruin mine.
Like Pecos Bill? Is that what you're going to say?
No. I was really afraid.
Johnny Appleseed.
The one that I'm going to say is probably one you would think of anyone here.
Paul Bunyan.
No. Paul Bunyan would have been cool, though.
Yes,
that would have been a
Paul
great
Bunyan would have been awesome.
Yeah. that would have been fantastic.
Pat Boone.
But okay, Will, Dorian Gray. What is he from? What does he do? You were talking about how he's immortal. I forget the name of his books. He shows up in 2 different books, but I don't remember what they are.
I'm pretty sure the first one was just Adventures of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. The second one, I don't remember. I don't know. Am I allowed to say I'm not a big fan of Oscar Wilde's writing style?
I mean,
send your hate mail to TJ at outlook.com.
We're getting all the hate today. Yeah. I think the book is called The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde.
Because immortalized in a picture. And he's like, what? And again, it asks the question, like, what would you, like the vampires, like others, what if you were immortal? What if you, like, death wasn't a thing? What would you do with your time if you don't have finitude as your like sense of urgency to live life to the fullest? What would you do with your time? What would you do with your life? So yeah, that same question is there presented among these people. But I think like amongst the heroes and their superpowers, if you're like lining up, you got the Hulk. Sorry guys. If you got the Hulk with Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then you have like Captain America, Tom Sawyer, or the old man Cap with the other dude. Now you have the Wolverine character, the immortal guy who can't be killed, and he heals up, that kind of thing.
Well, I like how they added him because he's kind of a morally gray character in his own book. So it fit the role that they gave him for the film, where spoilers, he was the traitor that was planted amongst them. And the movie, but it makes sense that they gave him the role they did in the movie, because what they do with comics is so like trippy and comicky and like, mustache twirling bad guy did mustache twirling things that like it just doesn't work on a movie. Even a movie as campy as this was a really campy movie, but it still just wouldn't have worked if the bad guy got them all together and said, how'd I get you here? Because I said so. It wouldn't have worked. So they had to have something to kind of fit the pieces together, and I feel like this did the job okay. Not great, but okay.
You also have the one-line zingers that, like, you have Sean Connery, so that whole, like, James Bond turn to the camera and go, yeah, shot you, catch you next time, buddy, or whatever. Like, they had the one-liners.
They were so funny.
Yeah.
I was dying.
This is like an Austin Powers movie where he turns to the character, breaks the fourth wall, and, like, makes, like, a pun of, like, whatever there's going on. So, yeah, that was over and over and over again with all the action explosions. I was like, wow, they're leaning hard into this.
Yeah. This was Sean Connery's last movie.
What? Really?
This was Sean Connery's last live action movie.
I just gotta say, I actually do really enjoy this movie.
He died in 2020. I don't know why this was his last movie. He just didn't act after
I'm done.
This ruined it.
He's like, I'm done. I'm peaked.
This ruined it for him. He's like, all right. That's funny. I don't know. I do really enjoy the movie, but yeah, like it's all kind of, even the bad guy is still mustache twirling. Like you still have him who is revealed to be Moriarty, and you have him like, oh, you thought you had me. Like literally, I think the line literally is, you thought you had me, but what about Sawyer or whatever? He's like, you trained him about as well as you did your son. Throws a knife and flies off the cliff, and you're like, wow, that was all kind of camp. Like, if we needed like a video demonstration of what we mean when we say camp, there it is.
Yeah.
But it was great. I thought it was so funny.
how can we create a car chase in 1899, 1998? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to create, it felt like Batman 1989. They try to create these places that look like Gotham, and they're like, oh, you know what we could do? We need a Batmobile. Oh, you know what we need? We need this, so that for me was like, oh, I'm looking through the lens of the phases of comic book things and not necessarily what Alan Moore was doing within the graphic novel itself. There's still that tension of old school, new school, tech, the new generation, what's happening, steampunk, sci-fi, horror, whatever.
Yeah, the comic was very steampunk.
I will say I love the aesthetic of this movie and comic book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like, there's a lot of things they changed. A lot of stuff that I didn't love in the movie after watching the comic, but I still love the movie mostly for nostalgia's sake because I watched this as I was pretty young. I was like 10 years old when I watched this, or 11. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, yeah. So for me, I'm like, oh, cool. Good guys are beating up some bad guys. Yay. Explosions. This is like Michael Bay before I saw a Michael Bay film. It's great.
Yeah. Early 2000s.
But like,
baby.
even after reading the comic, there are a few things that I'm like, ooh, I like this. Like how they portray the Nauticus. It looks cool. It looks so cool.
And the inside, like it has like in terms of like size and scale. I thought they were walking through the TARDIS, but no, it's a big ship. So I get it.
Yeah.
It's a cruise ship. It's a cruise ship.
It's great.
Man, I forgot what I was gonna say. Dang.
The TARDIS
Boats are
video.
cool. No, so when I saw this, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. But my dad got this from Dollar General as a DVD. So it was just on one day, and I walked in and was watching it. Apparently, he likes this movie a lot. And by this point, the only character I knew, like recognized from whatever, was Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Huh. Not
So I was like, oh, cool, he got his own movie.
Yeah, me too. When I watched it as a kid, that was the only one that I knew. I was like, yeah. So as like, I even remember looking back on, because I just did not remember the movie very well. I remember just different periods of my life being like, what was that movie that they randomly added Dr. Jekyll to? Like, it's just, to me, I was like, I just randomly added this guy.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of like our memories of the movie, because like, I told you this is like nostalgia, whatever land for me, which also for the record, I wasn't trying to do this episode. And initially I got in our Discord with the other host and was like, who's seen this film? And Will was like, I haven't seen it, but I could watch it for an episode. I was like, we should do an episode. But really, I just wanted to ask people, like, I wanted to tell this fun anecdote. And I waited to the episode to tell it after all this.
I love that.
I wish I knew what it was called. But it was VidAngel exists now. And it's more legal because you can have VidAngel and use it to watch Netflix or Hulu, and it'll filter things out for you.
Oh.
It is something that exists currently. But when I was a kid, I forget what it was called, but it was like Redbox, but they took the movie, edited it, and then sent it out. No, they edited it for this, though.
Redbox.
And you could pay to keep the movie, which is why it was initially decided in courts that, yeah, that's not legal. You're just changing an artist's work and then selling it, which you can do for other things. But this wasn't parody, so you're not allowed to do that. But the I one of the first movies I remember that weren't a cartoon that I was like able to own for myself was this edited version of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, that now watching it as an adult and watching this film going, I don't know what they edited out. Like maybe a few crude jokes. Like there wasn't like any sex scenes or anything. I'm like, what?
Yeah, like
what exactly was edited out of this?
Man.
Because like they kept all the like gory stuff. Like I still saw like this thing that you're like, what the heck is that? I've saw this thing. I saw Dorian Gray die. What did they edit exactly? They edited Skinner grabbing a girl's butt. Like, yeah. The
he does
Invisible Man
worse in the graphic
grabbing a
novel.
butt.
He does worse in the graphic novel.
He does a lot worse in the graphic novel.
Oh yeah.
Worse.
I did want to talk about that. Like, well, and also it's a different character, right?
Yeah.
Different character. Like it's not Skinner. It was the actual Invisible Man, and I think that's part of why they changed it for the film. Was not just copyright stuff with Universal, but I think part of it was also, we don't want that guy in our movie. That guy was just bad.
Yeah.
But again, back to the plot, like them stealing like certain aspects of their powers to use it as to team up their own people as weapons with this mass like empire of tanks and machine guns. I think that aspect of stealing their powers and siphoning off so they can use it, so they can have this big battle in the end. Like that's classic like superhero comic book movie stuff that I thought was good. And then the villain going like, there will be others like me. You can't kill the future, you know. And you're like, yeah, you're right. Like things progress, technology happens, and AI is right around the corner. You can't kill the future.
And doesn't this also take place before World War II?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that like part of the point? So like he's right. There is about to be a World War II.
And World War I. Like, no, it's like the turn of the centuries, like to turn from 1800s to 1900s. Yeah.
But also, this is like really the real point of the episode was we wanted to warn everybody. So you guys thought that the MCU was a problem now. What you didn't know is the MCU formula was a problem years before the MCU started. This was when it started. You had that like star power character. You had, we're going to just make bad versions of the good guys. You had everything that we complained about the MCU formula right here. Marvel's been doing it for years before Marvel movies were even like popular. It's crazy. And this is not a Marvel movie, for the record.
Guess what? There's formulas in the graphic novels and comics.
What?
Yeah. There's formulas.
Yeah. But also they did rely very heavily on that star power part of it of the, hey, Sean Connery, everybody likes him, right? Let's make a movie about him and we'll just use this graphic novel.
Yeah. I think my personal favorite comic formula is Green Lantern wins because he is strong-willed.
Yeah, true.
Never get tired of it.
That is one of my favorite Spider-Man plots.
Can I change my name from Ordinary Will to like Strong-Willed? Can I do that?
Yeah, Strong-Willed. But so we talked about some of the changes. We talked about some of like the campiness, other just like quirky things in the film, what characters were added. Overall, how do we enjoy the film? Like if you had to rate it 0 to 10, do you still think it's a good movie? I'm going to go first this time, and I'm going to give it 2 ratings. I'm going to rate it once, like seriously, like if I'm actually evaluating it for real, probably giving this like a 3 out of 10. If I'm evaluating it as like how much I actually enjoy it, probably a 6 or a 7. I enjoy it more than your average. And for me, 5 is average. Just because like there's all this nostalgia, there's all the explosions, cool fighting scenes. The ship looks freaking cool. I like Nemo there. I actually really appreciate that they showed like some of the Hindu worship stuff and like they didn't just make it like, oh, he's a bad guy. Like there's a lot of stuff I really enjoy in the movie, even though I'm able to look at it and go, yeah, this really isn't a good movie. But man, I do enjoy it. TJ, how would you rate this one?
Okay, it has been a while, but none of the bad stuff I remembered, which says to me that it is better than it is bad.
That's fair. That's fair.
Put that on the movie editing quote. This movie is better than it is bad, quote unquote.
So I'll give it a 6.
All right, Will.
I want that on a movie poster as the name. This movie.
When they started, I'm going to enjoy movie posters a lot more when they start enjoying, like, including quotes by TJ about the film. Yeah. Like it's like honest movie posters.
Yeah.
So for this episode,
if anyone's listening, if anyone is listening, you can send me a review copy of your movie. I will give you a quote.
Powerful quote. I think that name of this episode should be "This podcast is better than it is bad." So just that in that title, please just put that up there. This is better than it is. No, I like that. Like, yeah, I think right now going back and rewatching, I have to have 2 different ratings. Like as a movie as itself and what it does and its pacing and editing and the cheesy one-liners, it's a pretty bad movie. Like you're right, it's a 3 or 4. But like in terms of seeing it in its context of superhero movie history and like just having fun with it and watching it like ironically, I will give it a 6 or 7. Like it's pretty fun, you know. I can go back and watch it. Yeah, it's a fun
I do recommend everybody
now knowing that it's Sean Connery's last movie, dude, like it needs to like hold up there.
Yeah,
Bond himself. Like here we go. God.
Oh yeah. No, I definitely recommend people checking it out if they haven't. Last thing before we go, in the film, we mentioned they kind of switched the main character up, even though I didn't know who the main character of the comic was apparently, but I did know it wasn't Quartermain.
Right.
And in the movie, it did feel like Quartermain is like he is the main character, and they're kind of showing him like struggle with like his inner demons and like some of his past and this kind of stuff. How do you guys think the movie handled his past and the demons that he carries with him in this new story?
What is his demon? Remind me what his demons are. I know his demons are in the comic, but like what would you
I think they're going off of the literature bits too, but it's basically He blames himself for his son's death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's able to
More or
pass
less.
on to a new son, Tom Sawyer, like pass the torch.
Tom Sawyer. Just like what we all expected. Whenever you read the old novels, I'm sure the first thing you thought was, I bet Alan Quartermain goes to America and finds Tom Sawyer and mentors.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how they wrote the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
I mean, God wrote.
Anyway, we'll save this conversation.
Yeah, I maybe. I mean, I think like he's a big game hunter. There's this kind of window snapshot 2003 idea of colonization of Africa, and the Europeans are making better buildings and better technology, and like he regrets burying a couple of wives and loves of his life, and reflecting, and then his call, the vocation, the call outside himself to come help, the long live the queen and the empire or whatever. I think that's there. And then he knows he's older. He's on the sunset aspect of, or version of era of his life, and he's got to pass it on to the next one. There's a weird way that it ends, whether this witch doctor with superpowers is going to bring him back to life and raise from the dead. I don't know.
I'm hoping,
yeah.
I'm hoping
to
the witch
leave it
doctor
out,
raises it from the dead, then he goes to fight some aliens.
Right. So yeah, I think they try, but even that one liner of Wilhelmina, who's like, she's like extraordinary men and a woman, so she's leaning in like there is a female here. There's one female, but it's part of the graphic novel too.
Yeah. She's a cool character. I think I still feel like she's portrayed cooler in the movie than she is in the comic.
Okay, but you have to read the comic, folks out there, to say if Josh is right or wrong.
I don't think she's portrayed as lame in the comics.
Yeah, but she doesn't eat people. I need more eating of people. Well, I guess she later on, but like it takes a while. She's not as actiony.
She doesn't go vampire like she does in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I
mean. It's like chapter 2 when they hear about like Jekyll and Hyde, and she's like,
"True,
I can take care of this myself," and just like goes to look for him with a gun.
Yeah, but she wasn't very. I just don't feel like she did.
Well, no, it was like
helping get him. Yeah. Anyway. I don't know. I think if I divorce it from the comics and the stories and the characters, and I just look purely at like the bone structure of it, like completely deconstruct and go, a man who was once thought of as a hero, trying to live and die alone because he lives with this regret about his son, meeting someone who needs to learn how to be a hero and trying to mentor them. I like the beat. I like the beat of like, hey, even if you don't get it right with your family isn't just blood, and you can still pass something on to the next generation. Like that's cool. How they did it, but the idea, yeah, sure.
Joshua, I just need you to know that if you can't do it with one bullet, you're doing it wrong.
That's true.
Well, I don't know if it's true, but like that's definitely what Quartermain thinks.
Listen, here's what I know.
Okay.
I was going to say, I can't tell my wife. She's not going to listen to a podcast. And if she does, she's certainly not listening this long. And when we have gone to play laser tag, she has that strategy of, I'm going to hit the trigger over and over and over and over because you don't know how to bullets.
Yeah.
I just hit people when I shoot them. And I always win. Always win.
All right. There's that strategy. That's not a bad argument there.
I feel like aiming works better than pulling the trigger a lot.
We don't need semi-automatic.
You should just do both.
You can do both, and that does work better than either.
Laser tag, you should just do both.
That's true. The TJ beats both of us.
He
takes the time to aim, but then pulls the trigger over and over and over.
I need laser tag the movie. Let's do it.
There we go.
That's like a live action. It's like a live action Disney thing. That's like a TV movie. Disney from like
listen, here's what we need. We need Scotty Young to show up like he did with the Guardians. Like, I'm going to just take a couple of the characters and make some silly spin-off comics. And maybe have some fun, some like real stories, but mostly it's just going to be fun stuff. And he just decided, you know what? Mr. Hyde and Quartermain go to play laser tag. And that's what we get. I would read Scotty Young making that comic for some reason.
Or Joshua, TJ, and Will go to play laser tag. We get sucked into an extra dimensional portal, and then we're like in real laser. We have to figure out what that means.
Yeah.
That's
well, now that we've gone off the rails completely.
Okay.
It's time to wrap. So, wrapping up, going to let everybody know what the bonus question is ahead of time. We're going to be asking for our supporters, whether they're on Patreon, Captivate, or Apple Podcast. You can hear us answer the question. If you were to add any other famous literature characters to the team, who would you have chosen? If we were to add our own two, which two
I can
would
answer right now? Should I answer right now?
No. This is just for our supporters. Just for
Sherlock Holmes.
Patreon, Captivate, and Apple.
Oh, man.
that is. I have thoughts on that, but we'll talk about that in part 1. But hey, before anything else, let's give a recommendation. Other comics, games, anime, whatever you think would be a good recommendation for those listening as we wrap up. Just because we mentioned Hellboy so many times, I'm gonna go back to a oldie but a goodie. Hellboy in Hell, Mike Mignola. If you're gonna read like comic books as like real literature, that's it right there. Beautiful story, great art. Check it out.
Joshua Bingo.
So I was just going to say Elden Ring, but
TJ Bingo. Yeah.
I'm relevant. There's some relevance here. If you really like the aesthetic, if you're a big fan of steampunk, diesel punk, the comic and the movie respectively, and you play games, you have to play Dishonored. Dishonored is gorgeous, like semi-steampunk, gorgeous world. And if you've already played Dishonored and you're upset that I didn't give you a new one, go play Divine Cybermancy. Super old game, fantastic steampunk aesthetic. It's really fun.
All right. This is like a real recommendation. Now I actually want to check it out because TJ's recommendations usually are just whatever he said earlier. Yeah.
Cool. My recommendation is I'm way behind on my comics, way behind on my reading, way behind on like my TV shows. But I will say that I have appointment television with My Adventures with Superman on Max, and the kind of Avatar Last Airbender anime/animated Superman stories is so good. Season 2, we're halfway through it. It's amazing. I love it. It's charming. It's funny. It's moving. I love that cartoon.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. Check that stuff out. And hey, if you're listening on the podcast on Spotify, you can go hit like the 3 little dot thing and rate the show. Give us 5 stars. Helps other people find the show. If you're on Apple Podcast, rate and review. That helps them find the show. But if you want to help us the most and you're on a laptop, go to podchaser.com, rate and review there. That really helps the algorithms find us, and we really appreciate it. And of course, if you are on YouTube, we need you to smash that like and subscribe button because, if you don't smash those buttons, you're smashing Will's heart, and no one wants that. We all care about Will's health. So for Will, smash that like and subscribe button. All right, guys. Also, we want to give another shout out. Again, thank you, Daniel Sigmund, for being one of the people who support this show. We couldn't do this without people like Daniel. You rock, man. And remember, everybody, we're all a chosen people, a geekdom, a priest.
Hey guys, Christian here to talk about our Captivate options. That's when you send us a little extra money to just help us along with our project. But what do you get by giving us that extra money? Well, you have access to any future online D&D campaigns. You get extra bonus question content, which we do at least 48 times a month. You can make a one-time donation here of any amount to help support the show. This helps us with our overhead. That includes the editing software that we use, the recording software that we use, the marketing that we have to do for the show, the equipment that we all need to use to help out with the show, and more. So thank you for what you do. Head out to Captivate. Help us out. We really appreciate what you do. See you later.
If you love our show, you can follow the whole network in a single feed on Spotify at Anazao Ministry Podcast or the network page on Apple Podcasts. There you'll find shows like The Homely, The Whole Church Podcast, My Seminary Life, Let Nothing Move You, Dummy for Theology, The Bible After Hours, as well as mine and my husband's show, The Clydes, where my husband Taylor and I go through weekly discussions in a devotional conversational method to help us all get closer to one another and God.